Sometimes all it takes for a movement to happen is a home base, a location to facilitate its growth. This is something that we talk about a lot in the current music industry, as small venues have struggled to recover in a meaningful way since the pandemic. This is the story of a place that did just that. A place without which we may never have heard from some of the biggest and most influential artists in the history of music. This is the story of CBGBs. It all started back in 1973, in what would be one of the darkest and most dangerous eras in the history of New York City. In the 70s, New York was economically stagnant, overwhelmed by crime and poverty, and the infrastructure was failing from the inside out. The Bowery was one of the neighborhoods where the suffering was most obvious. A strip of dingy bars, cheap hotels, and missions, the streets just littered with people who had lost all hope. Hilly Crystal was once an aspiring musician himself, who decided instead to work in the venue business, even managing the popular Greenwich Village jazz club, the Village Vanguard. Eventually, when he was looking to open a bar of his own, he decided to try the suffering neighborhood where rents were cheap. He found a crappy little club that was situated beneath a flophouse called the Palace Hotel, and started a place that he first called Hilly's on the Bowery. Later, he decided to change the business plan a little bit to go with a hunch he had about the rise of country music in America. He changed the name to CBGBs. Country, Bluegrass, and Blues. But it didn't end up being a country music bar, now did it? The plan changed when a group of scrappy kids from the Midwest who'd recently moved to New York to form the band Television walked up to Hilly when he was standing on a ladder, painting the overhang sign for his new establishment. They asked if he'd be having live music. He responded, "What kind of music do you play?" Television's manager, Terry Ork, convinced Hilly to give them a chance because they could bring a lot of friends to the bar. He agreed, and Television played their first show there in the spring of 1974. And it wasn't no country music, let me tell ya. Soon the word spread, and avant-garde misfit bands from all around New York were showing up at CBGBs hoping to play. The Ramones, Patti Smith Group, Blondie, and Talking Heads all got their start playing shows at CBGBs and made it their headquarters. Each of these bands was drastically different in sound and style, but it was the vibe and the approach that were the same, opening the door for a whole world of music that came after them. Toward the end of the decade, CBGBs embraced hardcore with bands like Dead Boys, which would lead them into their next rougher era in the 80s with their hardcore matinees every Sunday afternoon. CBGB's was just a random club, but the fact that Hilly was so willing to allow these artists to grow and experiment with their music in a safe and encouraging environment was what facilitated the development of punk rock. If this subject interests you, I just made a mini documentary over on my Patreon account called The Blank Generation, where I get into more detail about punk and how each of these bands I mentioned contributed to the genre in their own unique ways. I found a lot of niche, rare footage and interviews for this one, and it included a ton of music, so go check it out. If you subscribe, you get access to the entire series. Find the links in our bio.